Hello, Laura.
Hello.
Thank you so much for humbly accepting this invitation to the Ministry of Everyday God Talk, which is also a part of what we do at the Office of Theologian Worship at Presbyterian Mission Agency, which organization you know so very well. And we are so excited and humbled to have you here and also honored. Everyone knows you. You are a Presbyterian influencer on social media. And one of the most the coolest people, I guess, in Presbyterian Church. Yay.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, but if you can, how would you describe yourself to our audience today?
Hi, everyone. My name is Laura Mariko Cheifetz, and I use pronouns she, her, and hers. I am a double pastor's kid, also ordained minister, teaching elder. I'm biracial Asian American of Japanese and white Jewish descent. And I'm born in California, raised in the Pacific Northwest. So I did not know that the Presbyterian Church was an ethnic church until I was in my mid-20s, I think. I just thought, it's just like one of the options. I didn't know I had an ethnic tie. And I am queer. I've been living in the Southeast for about 12 years, but I lived in the Midwest, lived in California, lived in New York, and am from Eastern Oregon and Western Washington was where I grew up. And I'm an auntie. So nieces and nephews, both by blood and by love, chosen family. So I really enjoy that. And I'm a rescue dog mom.
Wow, that's
so much.
One of the best introduction of who I am. I think in this Everyday God Talk so far. So thank you so much for us to have this chance to know you more as a person, not just as a Presbyterian minister and a leader of the church. So our first question, in all these that you described about who you are as a person, where do you find theology about your idea about who God is, or what the church is, and what the Christian community is? Which part of that journey nurtures your soul with that kind of so-called what we call as theology?
I'm just really, really Presbyterian. Like at some point I realized this is it. This is who I am. Just gonna have to suck it up and be honest about it. And I think it's in part, or in large part, because my theology. And so I actually really love the idea that we're accountable, which I actually think is a theological concept. Like we're connected to each other and there's accountability built into that. Because I have a very incarnational theology. And so as the people of God, it's not just that like, okay, there's me and then there's other people out there. And I guess we're all people of God. It's like, no, there are specific relational ties and agreements that we have made, because even if we are very different, so like not everyone in the PCUSA is Asian American, not everyone's a person of color, not everyone's queer or part of the LGBTQIA plus community. We are still tied to each other by the agreements we make that are explicitly theological. And I think that my understanding of relationship with God is so tied up actually with the church and with my sense of ecclesiology. So I've totally had those conversations on airplanes back when I was an idiot and told people what I did. where people are like, oh, I'm spiritual, but not religious. And I'm always like, I'm religious, not spiritual, which I don't think is necessarily accurate. So I will concede that. But in a lot of ways, the way that I understand our relationship with the holy and with one another is very much tied through this sense of, like I might have an individual relationship with God, but through the church as well, in part because without the church, I think I would be relatively untethered and only try to be in community with people like me. And what I like about being part of the church is that I am actually required to be in relationship somehow and accountable to somehow these people who are hyper different from me, who like live in a different part of the country or approach their own faith very differently. We've all agreed to be a part of this church. And so there I am, so religious.
That's very religious. And we will maybe delve more into the religious aspects. And I think one of your religious engagement with Presbyterian Church also very much well showing, not just as an influencer on social media, but you actually do lots of work on the denominational level and national level. And one of those was a recent engagement with the General Assembly. And then at some point, you mentioned about this theology of abundance, not abandonment, abundance. And I don't think it's necessarily your personal theology, but like, as we face this time of change where we might feel a little frustrated, and then maybe, like we act upon, as you said, theology of scarcity instead of, love and abundance. Do you have any witness or experience or like epistemology? Again, like we are still talking about our soul and theology. Like, how do you think of that theology of abundance from your perspective?
So I think because I'm always aware when I'm doing theology, or really honestly anything, I'm always aware of where we're located. And I don't think that we're like a sadly beleaguered, downtrodden minority. I think that we actually have a ton of structural power. So I know it doesn't feel the same as it used to feel, right? Like in the 50s and 60s, being Presbyterian is super different than it is now. But to be a mainline Protestant in the United States, majority white denomination that has been able to benefit from centuries at this point of taking people's land and using people's labor and just having the level of political access that we've had over the centuries. I understand it feels like really different now, and I think we may need to kind of nuance some of how we approach our sense of being church. But we just have really a ton of power built up over that time. And we definitely have plenty. So at this point, like I did say during General Assembly, we really have more of an allocations problem. And I know that like when you're sitting down and you're looking at a budget and you're like, okay, here are all the people that we employ, here are the programs that we fund, and you look at it and you're like, we have less money to work with than ever before. That's the part that can feel like, oh my gosh, we really don't have enough. But in terms of our larger witness to the gospel and our social location as a church as a whole, we have plenty. And so I think even though there are places or times where it feels very crunched, because when you sit down and you look at like just the numbers or whatever those numbers are, it can feel like, ugh, and you can fall right into that scarcity thinking. I actually think that if we came at everything from that theology of abundance, like, okay, we might not have the money to just fund everything that we've ever wanted, which is not how our church works anyway. It's like literally not our system. But we have enough resources. Let's think creatively about how to do this kind of witnessing work, which I think is both true and accurate to the level of privilege that we have accumulated, which includes money. But I think it's also accurate to how our faith is that we've inherited, and that it requires a little bit of a reframing to always think like, okay, how do I think out of abundance rather than scarcity, and get a little bit creative in light of actual financial restrictions that we may have. But I just even look at some other religious groups who really don't have very much at all. And I'm just like, I know it's hard. I know it's hard right now, and I don't mean to make light of it or to say it's not complicated, but I think we really do have a lot. And it's a matter of figuring out where that a lot is and then how to use it.
Wow, that's a powerful theology, and then also like very concrete incarnated theology, I guess, to talk about and think about what we have material wise, and then think of God's work in that sense.